Today, I have the honor of speaking with one of my favorite singers of all time. Many people know him as the frontman for the 80s pop sensation Men at Work, with hits like Down Under, Who Can It Be Now, and Overkill. But his musical legacy has extended for more than 4 decades, most of that time as a solo artist. Grammy Award-winning singer-songwriter Colin Hay is embarking on a 2025 international tour to support his new album, Man at Work Volume 2. Colin, great to see you.
Yes, nice to be with you.
Man at Work Volume 2 opens with Into My Life, featuring drummer Greg Bissonette from the Ringo Starr and the All-Star Band, and your wife, Latin music star Cecilia Noel. Now, Into My Life originally appeared on your solo album, Wayfaring Sons, and exploded in Brazil in the 1990s. And I heard you mention into the mini documentary Into My Life, where you mentioned Brazil was the only place where the song was a hit, but you believed in that tune, and now it's on this new album.
I think it was worth a second listen. You know, 35 years later, it was off an album called Wayfaring Sons, which was actually my second album. My first record that I made after my solo record was called Looking for Jack, which was in '86, '87, and then this was the second album, Wayfaring Sons. I think it was one of those things where I was signed to MCA Records, which was, probably on its way out anyway at that point. And I don't really think that the record label was particularly into the record that I gave them. So they weren't particularly interested in working the record. But in Brazil, the song was picked up because Men at Work was so successful in Brazil. The record label. Well, I don't know. I don't know who is responsible, but the song was kind of picked up and used on this soap opera. And soap operas were very popular down there, so the song became a really huge song, like that paralleled any of the Men at Work songs. So it was just interesting in the sense that if one country adopts it and people really love it, you think to yourself, well, if it gets a look in, or if people are prepared to play it, people would respond to it. But that's not what happened here. So anyway, I had a hit in one country in the world, which is better than no countries.
We're going to get to your sense of humor, which is great, and I love it, especially when you're doing intimate settings. How fun is it working with your wife, Cecilia? You two seem to really enjoy each other on stage.
Yeah, well, it has a history of I think it was probably around 94, 93, 94. I well, I met Cecilia very briefly in New York in the 80s actually, but I didn't see her again until 93. Yeah, I used to take people to see her band, which played at the Baked Potato in in Hollywood or in the Valley there, from like maybe 93 and 94 on. So she had this incredible band called the Wild Clams. And so, we knew each other for quite a long time before we actually got together. So, yeah, she's a great musician and a great band leader. So she's actually taught me a lot over the years, and I've stolen quite a few musicians from her over the years.
Yeah, it's wonderful seeing you two working together. My Lady Rose and I recently saw you both at the PNC Art Center with Toto and Christopher Cross. You and Cecilia were amazing at the City Winery in NYC in 2024, a few years ago with Rick Springfield on tour and John Waite. And I saw you with Men at Work. You were singing your way to everybody's hearts in the 80s when In Excess was your opening act at the Stanley Theater in Pittsburgh in 1983. The same year, Men at Work won a Grammy for Best New Artist. One thing is clear to me, Colin, after seeing you so many times. Your vocal range is still unbelievable. How much work goes into that?
Well, I wouldn't say it's work, but it's like anything. It's a muscle, so you have to exercise it. So I warm up before I sing, um, and I have a vocal coach, and I've had a vocal coach for about the last 5 years who gives me exercises to do, and sleep is important. Getting enough sleep, believe it or not, it's a very important thing to for the for the for your voice. But it's really what I don't do more than anything else. I'm not giving myself a hammering like I used to. So that's also a good thing.
That means you're blessed, Colin. And another standout track on the album is one of your most recent tunes, "We the People," featuring rapper Derek Salpawa Rice, and which
Yeah.
you were inspired to write in the midst of the polarizing U.S. presidential election in 2024. Can you talk a little bit more about what this song means to you?
Well, it's a huge subject, isn't it? Especially at the moment. In this country. I mean, I came to the United States, I think, uh, a long time ago now, like 35 years ago or something. So I've been living here for a long time in California. Um, uh, but yeah, it's very, as you say, it's polarizing. It's very divided. There's some horrendous things going on, like that happened the other day, and happened in the well. If you go back historically, there's been a lot of political violence in American history right from the start of the country. And one would hope that over the course of time things would get better in the sense that we would be able to see each other for who we are instead of it being so hateful and divided. So anyway, I wrote the song just to remind people that we all have a voice. Each person does have a voice, and there's a lot of things at play, or whether it's people being discouraged from voting, or people it being very difficult to vote. But at the end of the day, the more people who vote, the better off the country is, I believe. So it was really more. It was really about that, to remember that we really do have the power, theoretically, anyway, in a democracy. And so I was hoping that the song, and I make no secret of the fact that I'm left of center in terms of my political allegiance. So I was hoping that the song would get picked up by the Kamala Harris campaign, but it didn't really. But the song stands as a piece, whether it's involved with an election campaign cycle or not. And I was really pleased to get Saul to rap on it, and he came up, and he's someone that Cecilia knew, and he did a fantastic job in like just a couple of hours, came up with those lyrics. And so I'd always wanted somebody to rap on it. I had the song sitting there for quite a few years, and with the lyrics written and the other part of the song done, but I didn't really know I wasn't really in that world. And so anyway, I met Saul and asked him to come up, and he did a great job with the rhymes.
Catch a Star from your smash Business as Usual Men at Work album that was originally released in Australia in 1981 and then the US in 82 is one of my personal favorites, and it's on this album. What did you want to do with it this time?
Well, the whole Man at Work idea was the record companies. When I first signed with Compass Records in 2003, I think it was, they said, "Look, there's not that many people who are aware of your name. The Men at Work brand is much stronger. So, would you do an album? Would you consider doing an album called Man at Work, which really tells the story? Here's a guy who was in that band Men at Work, and he's not in the band anymore, but he's now a man at work. So it was an obvious thing to do. So we wanted to do different versions of some Men at Work songs, and coupled with new songs. So that's what we did with that album, and that's what we did with this album as well. So it's like, you just want to. I think I've almost mined all the Men at Work material that I can to to rework them. But I've always liked that song, and I mean, it's slightly different from the original, but it's not really not that different from the original, except it's a re-recording, and it's playing with the musicians that I work with now, who I love to play with. So it was just a chance to revisit that song and record it again with modern recording techniques, which are not really any better than the recording techniques that we had then, but they're different, the different musicians. So it came out with its own flavor. This, as is what happens when you re-record a song with different players. It's always going to sound different.
So this is volume one, by the way.
Yeah,
And volume two, it looks very similar. Volume two, you'll notice a little changed on Colin. But I also wanted to mention this is a fabulous album too for Colin Hay. So you
yeah.
definitely want to check out that album. Now, I mentioned that you have a tremendous sense of humor and you tell stories, especially when you were at City Winery. You told a story you were with and you've traveled with and toured with Ringo Starr and his all-star band. But Sir Paul McCartney made a visit to your house one day, called up and said, "Hey, I'm coming over." Can you tell just a brief version of that story? Because it's wonderful.
Well, it's a long story, and it's really you can't really do an abbreviation of it in a way because because it really has a start and a middle and an end, but the crux of it was that he did come to my house, which is an extraordinary thing anyway, and I made him dinner, and but I think that if you want to hear that story, when it's all said and done, you're going to have to come to a show.
That makes sense. While we're on the subject of great songwriters like Paul McCartney, you were inducted into the Australian Writers Hall of Fame in 2020. What's the secret in your mind to good songwriting?
Well, that's a tricky question. Um, I think a song has to have some kind of density to it. There has to be something in there that you want to discover, that draws you in somehow or transports you. Or like I remember when, I mean, it happens with a lot of different songwriters, whether you're young or if you first got involved with, say, even listening to the Beatles, you would hear a song like the first song I ever heard was is "She Loves You," and you can listen to that song now, and it's a simple song, but it's beautifully constructed. I mean, it starts off with the chorus, which is unusual, but it's sometimes songs make unusual things sound perfectly normal and clearly the thing to do, or you hear a long song like a Bob Dylan song, uh, uh, and the last, say, maybe it was 7 or 8 years ago. I can't quite remember how long ago it was, but he put out this song called "A Murder Most Foul" about the killing of John F. Kennedy, and it's just an extraordinary piece of work, lyrically and musically. It's just incredible, and but I don't know. In terms of what makes a song great, I don't know. There's simple songs. There's complicated songs. There's songs that really tell a story musically. There's songs that tell a story lyrically. Someone like Joni Mitchell seems to have both of those areas covered really well. But I don't know. I like songs that draw you in for whatever reason, and hold you captivated.
Volume two, you're going to hear songs like Blue for You, Come Tumbling Down. Another one of my favorites is Oh California from your American Sunshine album in 29. I wanted to ask you about, since we are a jazz station, Looking for Jack, your first solo album, you featured the great pianist Herbie Hancock on the title track. How did that collaboration happen?
It was incredible. I was in London making that record, looking for Jack, with a great record producer, an Englishman, called Robin Miller, and he did all the Sade records, Everything But the Girl, and Fine Young Cannibals, a whole lot of records. Anyway, I was making the album, looking for Jack, and we'd finished the track, guitar, bass, and drums, and the vocal was there. And he said to me, "You know who'd be great on this record?" And I said, "Who's that?" He said, "Herbie Hancock." And I said, "Oh yeah, well, that would be great, you know." And he said to his assistant, he said, "Polly, can you find out where Herbie Hancock is at this particular moment in time?" And so she went off and she came back and she said, "Well, yeah, actually, he's in London at the moment, and he's playing, he's performing, but he has a night off." And so he said, "Do you think you could find him and see if he'll come and play on this record?" And Wayne Shorter was there as well. And so Herbie Hancock and Wayne Shorter came to the studio, and they just walked in, and I didn't know Herbie I'd met him a couple of times, but I didn't really know him very well. So he sat down and he had a little glass of red wine. He said, "Okay." And he went into the studio and sat at the piano. He said, "Give me the track." And we played the track. We ran the track 4 times and recorded every take. And he said, "Do you have enough?" And we said, "Yeah, we have plenty." And that was it. And Wayne played as well. But Robin didn't end up using the saxophone because he thought that it was just too left. So he didn't end up using that.
Mm,
So we ended up just going with the piano that Herbie played, which was sublime.
yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure a big highlight for you. And of course, we're from Newark here, and you know, Wayne Shorter, very own Newark born great
Yeah.
saxophonist. So everyone can still hear his music, as well as Colin Hay, who will be in our area November 7th in Terrytown, New York at the Terrytown Music Hall, November 8th at Glenside, Pennsylvania at the wonderful Keswick Theater. That's a great place to see shows. And November 9th at Englewood, New Jersey, of course, the Bergen Performing Arts Center is where you can find Colin Hay. I did want to ask you before we left, you came from a very kind of a musical family. Your dad owned a music shop and was a piano tuner. When do you remember the first time you actually sang or performed as a young kid?
Um, well, I used to sing at home just to myself in the bedroom before I left Scotland to go to Australia. Um, but I remember singing on the ship on the way over to Australia. They had a little talent contest there. I remember singing some song on that. But I think it was probably when I was about 14 years old. I started to sing, and I started to sing, play in little folk clubs and stuff from when I was about 15 years old.
We're so glad you made that decision, especially me, Colin, because as I mentioned at the top, I just think you're one of the best out there, and you continue to be. And now with this new recording, Man at Work, Volume 2, your sequel to the 2003 bestseller, Man at Work. It's an honor to talk to you. Continued success. Give my love to your wife. You two are magic on stage, and we look forward to seeing you when you come to the area.
All right. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much.